So now let us see in brief about the coadjutor and auxiliary bishops. The coadjutor bishop enjoys the right of succession The coadjutor bishop enjoys the right of succession, which means that he automatically becomes a diocesan bishop when the see is vacant. So coadjutor bishop enjoys the right of succession. If the diocesan see is vacant, immediately the coadjutor become the bishop of the diocese. Therefore, there can only be one coadjutor bishop, not many, in the diocese. There can only be one coadjutor bishop, and he is appointed vicar general by the diocesan bishop. He can be also the vicar general of the diocese, appointed by the diocesan bishop. There can be more than one auxiliary bishop. There can be more than one auxiliary bishop, and they are nominated as vicars general or episcopal vicars. They are nominated as vicars general or episcopal vicars. One of them can receive special faculties from the apostolic see to be nominated as vicar general. The presence of these bishops in the diocese makes it function better, although it raises certain questions. So the coadjutor or the auxiliary bishops, fulfill their office in union with the diocesan bishop. So in union with the diocesan bishop, they should fulfill their office. Who remains the head of the diocese? So diocesan bishop is the head of the diocese. But from the part of the diocesan bishop must consult them with regard to acts of major importance. So from the part of the bishop, diocesan bishop, if there are any major issues, he should consult them. The auxiliary, if he has got auxiliary bishop or if he has got a coadjutor bishop. So the difference is between coadjutor and auxiliary. The coadjutor has got the right of succession. Therefore, there should be only one in the diocese. And auxiliary bishops can be any number. And they can function as the vicar general or episcopal vicars. Canon 413 (413). Unless the Holy See has provided otherwise, when a see is impeded, the governance of the diocese devolves on the coadjutor bishop, if there is one. If there is no coadjutor, or if he is impeded, it devolves upon the auxiliary bishop, or the vicar general, or the episcopal vicar, or another priest. The order of persons to be followed is to be that determined in the list which the diocesan bishop is to draw up as soon as possible after taking possession of his diocese. This list, which is to be communicated to the metropolitan, is to be revised at least every 3 years and kept under secrecy by the chancellor. So, the diocesan bishop should make a list of these. If there is a coadjutor, auxiliary, and who should be the vicar general, who are to be episcopal vicars, etc. And when the see is vacant or impeded, according to the hierarchy of these offices, they function and they have the responsibility. Paragraph 2, if there is no coadjutor bishop, or if he is impeded, and the list mentioned in the canon in the paragraph 1 is not at hand, it is the responsibility of the College of Consultors to elect a priest who will govern the diocese. If above mentioned persons are not there, such as coadjutor, auxiliary bishop, and vicar general and episcopal vicar, the College of Consultors come together and elect a priest who will govern the diocese. And when the see is vacant, canon 418, when the see is vacant, within 2 months of receiving certain notification of transfer, the bishop must proceed to the diocese to which he has been transferred and take canonical possession of it. On the day on which he takes possession of the new diocese, the diocese from which he has been transferred becomes vacant. So if the bishop of Eluru is transferred to Vijayawada, when he takes possession of Vijayawada, at the moment of the taking possession of the as the bishop of Vijayawada, the bishop of Eluru becomes vacant. And as bishop, he should, after the announcement of his transfer, within 2 months he should take the possession of the another diocese where he is going, within 2 months. And if he is not a bishop, announcement of the candidate to the bishopric, he should get consecrated within 3 months. So clear? If any priest is elevated to the bishopric, and he should get consecrated within 3 months. If he is already a bishop, if he is transferred to another diocese, he should take possession within 2 months. So don't forget the difference. So canon 421, paragraph 1, within 8 days of receiving notification of the vacancy of an episcopal see, a diocesan administrator is to be elected by the College of Consultors. So within 8 days, the College of Consultors should elect the diocesan administrator when the see is vacant, to govern the diocese for the time being without prejudice to the provisions of canon 502, paragraph 3. And who should be the diocesan administrator? Canon 425, paragraph 1. Only a priest who has completed his 35th year of age and has not already been elected, appointed or presented for the same see can validly be deputed to the office of diocesan administrator. Paragraph 2. As diocesan administrator, a priest is to be elected who is outstanding for doctrine and prudence. So he should be a priest of age 35 years completed, and who has not already been elected previously or appointed or presented for the same office of the same diocese. Canon 427, the diocesan administrator is bound by the obligations and enjoys the power of a diocesan bishop, excluding those matters which are accepted by the nature of things or by the law itself. Paragraph 2. The diocesan administrator obtains his power on his acceptance of the election. So as soon as the election is over, if he accepts the election, he obtains the power without the need of confirmation from anyone, but without prejudice to the provision of Canon 833, number 4. And the next, the diocesan synod, Canons 460 to 468. This is a consultative assembly, not permanent but occasional, which the diocesan bishop can convoke when the circumstances suggest. This is only a consultative assembly, diocesan synod. Consultative assembly is not permanent but occasional, which the diocesan bishop can convoke when the circumstances suggest, in order to confer on various questions and projects that are to be carried out in the diocese. If there are any important matters or projects or questions to be discussed and clarified, he can convoke the diocesan synod. Some persons belong to the synod by reason of the office they have in the diocese. So, ex officios, bishop, vicars, rector of the seminary, etc., are the ex officios of the synod, diocesan synod. Whereas others are elected or designated by the diocesan bishop, others are elected or designated by the diocesan bishop, so that all the ecclesial realities be represented. Ecclesial realities such as clerics, laity, consecrated persons, associations, etc., all are represented in the participation of diocesan synod. The synod is put under the guidance of the diocesan bishop. It is put under the guidance of the diocesan bishop, who presides over it personally or by means of his vicar. Who presides over it personally or by means of his vicar. it belongs to him to suspend or dissolve it. It belongs to him to suspend or dissolve it. All the questions that have been proposed are freely discussed in the synod. According to the agenda, they can freely discuss the questions that are proposed in the synod, and afterwards they can be put to vote. If there is no unanimous opinion on or about a particular question, they can go for the voting. This vote has only a consultative value. So that vote has only the consultative value because it solely belongs to the diocesan bishop, because it solely belongs to the diocesan bishop as the only legislator in the diocese. As only the legislator in the diocese to decide how the synodal conclusion should be. To decide how the synodal conclusions should be published and to make them operative. As he has got the legislative power, he can decide how the synodal conclusions should be published and to make them operative. The diocesan curia. In the diocese we have the diocesan curia. This is a permanent structure which the bishop uses in carrying out his various tasks. This is a permanent structure which the bishop uses in carrying out various tasks of his pastoral function of government. Pastoral functions of government. So diocesan curia, canons 469 to 474. So it's a permanent structure. To fulfill the tasks of pastoral function of the government. It is made up of the vicars. It is made up of the vicars, the tribunal, the chancellor, the notaries, employees, etc. When we say diocesan curia, all these are included. So of course, bishop and secretary, procurator, financial administrator, he can remain in the diocese or in the curia or outside also. So it is made up of the vicars, tribunal, the chancellor, the notaries, so notaries are those who take down the minutes and work in the tribunal, employees, etc. A vicar general can be nominated as moderator to coordinate the activities of the curia. A vicar general, if he is residing in the diocesan curia, he can be nominated as a moderator to coordinate the activities of the Kuria. Logically, the diocesan Kuria acts under the authority and in union with the diocesan bishop. The diocesan Kuria acts under the authority and in union with the diocesan bishop. And to him the power of nomination belongs for the various offices of the Kuria. The diocesan bishop, he can nominate all these people for the various offices of the Kuria. So what is the diocesan Kuria? It is a permanent structure and it is made up of vicars, the tribunal, the chancellor, notaries and other employees, etc. And who will nominate? The diocesan bishop, and they should work under the authority of the diocesan bishop and in union with him. Next, the diocesan vicars. The diocesan vicars, canons 475 to 481. In every diocese there is at least one vicar general, at least one. And there can be 2, 3 as per the need. At least one vicar general. There can be other episcopal vicars. All of them enjoy ordinary executive power. Vicar general and episcopal vicars enjoy the executive power, ordinary executive power. The difference between vicar general and episcopal vicars with regard to executive power, a slight difference. That is, the vicar general has it for the entire diocese. The vicar general has the executive power for the entire diocese and for all the administrative matters. And for all administrative matters. The episcopal vicars have it only for a zone of the diocese. The episcopal vicars have it only for a zone of the diocese, or over one given type of affair, or over one given type of affair. So vicar general has got the executive power in the entire whole of diocese, but episcopal vicars, they have only in particular zone or particular type of work. For example, pastoral activity or over consecrated life or catechesis, etc. There is also judicial vicar. So vicar general, episcopal vicars and judicial vicar, who enjoys ordinary judicial power judicial vicar enjoys the ordinary judicial power and directs the activity of the tribunal. So he has got only the judicial power, and others, vicar general and episcopal vicars, executive power. And all the vicars, these three, vicar general, episcopal vicars and judicial vicar, all the vicars exercise the competencies of their office. All the vicars exercise the competencies of their office in the name and in representation of the diocesan bishop. They exercise the competency only in the name of the diocesan bishop. These are positions of trust. These are positions of trust whose nomination belongs to the bishop. Only the bishop nominates them, and this is the office of trust. And earlier we said, if there is coadjutor bishop, he can be nominated as the vicar general. And the auxiliary bishops will be also nominated as the vicars. Since the vicars have ordinary executive power, they are also territorial ordinaries according to the provision of Canon 134. This means that when in the code or elsewhere a certain act is said to belong to the ordinary, a certain act is said to belong to the ordinary or to the local ordinary, or to the local ordinary, both the diocesan bishop and the vicars have the capacity to realize them. Both the diocesan bishop and the vicars have the capacity to realize them. So Canon 134 is important. In the law, the term ordinary means, apart from the Roman pontiff, diocesan bishops, and all who, even for a time only, are set over a particular church or a community equivalent to it in accordance with the Canon 368, and those who in these have general ordinary executive power, that is, vicars general and episcopal vicars, likewise For their own members, it means the major superiors of the clerical religious institutes of pontifical right and of clerical societies apostolic life of pontifical right, who have at least ordinary executive power. So, ordinary executive power, apart from the Roman pontiff, all these have diocesan bishop, vicar general, episcopal vicars, and the major superiors of clerical institutes of pontifical right, not of the diocesan right, or the major superiors of clerical societies of apostolic life. We have the pontifical right. So, these are called ordinaries. And along with the bishop and other ecclesiastical community equivalent to it, to the diocese. Earlier we had seen 368. Canon 368. So, equivalent to diocese are these: a territorial prelature, a territorial abbacy, a vicariate apostolic, a prefecture apostolic, and a apostolic administration. So, all these are also ordinaries. So, ordinary or the local ordinary. So, ordinary and local ordinary, bishop and these offices about whom we have mentioned. But the major superiors of the pontifical right will not come under local ordinary. They are only ordinaries. So, the difference is there. They are not the local ordinaries. When the law makes express mention of the diocesan bishop, it should be understood as referring to him and to him alone, and not to his vicars unless they have received a special mandate. Canon 134, paragraph 3. So, when the canon mentions the diocesan bishop, it is only the bishop, not the vicar general, episcopal vicars and all. Is it clear? Here through three names: ordinary, local ordinary, and diocesan bishop. In different places, the code uses the terms ordinary when it is used ordinary, bishop, vicar general, episcopal vicar, and the heads of the diocese equivalent to the diocese, apostolic prefectura and apostolic abbacy and administration, apostolic administration, all these. And when it is said local ordinary, all these excluding the religious major superiors of the pontifical right. And when it mentions the diocesan bishop, it is only the bishop, not other. So, when the law makes express mention of the diocesan bishop, it should be understood as referring to him and to him alone, and not to his vicars, unless they have received a mandate according to Canon 134, paragraph 3.